There is belief, and then there is skepticism. And between those two lies a vast territory of questions and the unknown. But what if reality is far more complex than we've been willing to perceive? And what if the stories that we dismissed as myth and legend hold the keys to understanding consciousness? From ghostly encounters to mysterious lights in the sky, humanity has always sensed there was something more out there. Some call it the paranormal, and others call it the divine. Some search the stars for answers, while others look within. They are all connected, threads in the grand tapestry of life. But we stand at a place where the fabric between realities is much thinner than you might think, because this is Crossroads of the Veil.
Though death smiles at us all, to smile back is to choose a life whose actions echo in eternity.
Welcome to the place where the world we think we know touches the shadows of the unexplained. It's a hidden intersection you won't find on any map. It's where the compass of our understanding spins wildly, toward a reality beyond our senses, a world hidden in plain sight. You're sitting in a room listening to my voice. The air seems empty, but it's not. It is filled with an invisible storm of information, radio waves, television signals, Wi-Fi, and 1,000 cell phone conversations. Your ears can't hear them, your eyes can't see them, but they are there. You need only the right receiver to tune into the reality layered on top of your own. This is about tuning our perception to listen to those signals usually lost in the static of everyday life. The quiet corner of reality we think we know, the place the solid ground of history and science, suddenly gives way. Your heart pounds, and your mind races. Part of you wants to run, to return to the familiar path and pretend you saw nothing. But another part, the curious, the brave part, wants to step through. This is that place. It's where declassified documents whisper secrets that defy belief. It's where the line between national security and existential mystery blurs. Here, the official story from history books and the nightly news is just peeling paint over a much older, stranger truth. If you look closely, you can glimpse what lies beneath. These are accounts rooted in official government files, locked away deep inside buildings where you needed the highest security clearance just to walk down the hall. These are stories from the edge of human understanding, peering into an abyss of possibilities that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about our world and our place in it. The people in these stories are not wild-eyed mystics, but colonels, physicists, intelligence officers, and police commissioners. Sober people paid to know what is real. Their lives were built on facts, evidence, and cold, hard logic. They were supposed to protect us from things that weren't real. What they found broke all the rules. It shattered their understanding of the world, and in some cases, it cost them everything. We descend into a story beginning in the Cold War, a time of profound fear and even more profound secrets. A time when two superpowers weren't just racing to conquer outer space, but an uncharted territory much closer to home. The conflict was fought not only with spies, satellites, and submarines, but with a silent, invisible weapon both sides feared and coveted: the untapped potential of the human mind. We are peeling back the layers on a U.S. government program so secret, its official termination only deepened the enigma. A program that lived in the shadows for over 20 years. A ghost in the national security machine. This was Project Stargate, America's psychic spy program. But that is another story. This is the story of an unsanctioned mission. A secret hidden within a secret, and a mission to verify an unbelievable claim from one of its most gifted operatives. A claim of a hidden global network of bases, but they were not built by human hands. So dim the lights and settle in. We are about to follow a signal that started in one man's mind and echoed through the halls of the Pentagon. A signal that suggests we are not, and have never been, alone. This is the mapping of a reality they never wanted us to see. A reality where human history is one small chapter in a much older, stranger story. This is the story of Project 8200 and the echo that Pat Price left. Our story begins with the tangible fear haunting the highest offices of the CIA and the Pentagon in the early 1970s. The Cold War. It wasn't just a headline. It was a shadow that fell over every quiet moment. For decades, the world held its breath under the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. Imagine being a child then. A siren wails in your classroom. You don't hesitate. You scramble under your wooden desk, practicing for the end of the world as if that could protect you from an atomic blast. This fearful world created the story we are about to tell. This was a battle of technology, ideology, and intelligence. Every day was a desperate search for an edge, any edge, to guarantee survival. America was a nation of technological giants. We had spy planes like the SR-71 Blackbird, a machine that seemed to be from the future. It could scream across the sky at over 2,000 miles per hour, photographing a newspaper headline from 70,000 feet, an altitude where the sky turns black and you can see the Earth's curve. We had nuclear submarines, silent hunters that could disappear for months, gliding through the crushing blackness of the deep ocean, our ultimate insurance policy. We were masters of the physical world. We could see, hear, and touch almost anything. But a new, unsettling front was opening, one that couldn't be mapped by satellites or patrolled by submarines. It was an unseen battlefield. The human mind. Whispers leaked from behind the Iron Curtain, smuggled out by terrified spies and weary defectors. They suggested the Soviets were pouring massive resources into psychotronics. It sounded like a word from a cheap science fiction novel, but the reports were deadly serious. Then, in 1970, a book landed on CIA analysts' desks that turned these whispers into a roar. Psychic Discoveries. Behind the Iron Curtain landed like a bombshell in the intelligence community. Imagine you're a CIA analyst in Langley. Your job is reading dry reports on Soviet tank production and missile capabilities. Your world is numbers, satellite photos, and intercepted radio signals. Then this book lands on your desk. You open it, perhaps with a smirk, expecting nonsense. But as you read, the smirk fades. The book wasn't filled with vague, mystical claims. It was a detailed, sober account of state-sponsored Soviet research. It detailed experiments in telepathy, clairvoyance, and telekinesis, all backed by the KGB and the Soviet military. The Soviets were studying people who could supposedly see through walls, read minds from 1,000 miles away. According to the most chilling reports, they could stop a person's heart with sheer focused thought. They weren't just building tanks, they were trying to weaponize the human mind. The paranoia in Washington was palpable. Imagine being the security chief at a nuclear missile base in North Dakota. You have fences, motion sensors, pressure plates, armed guards, and 20-ton vault doors. Your security is perfect, impenetrable. But suddenly you have to worry about a threat that could bypass every fence, vault door, and guard. A threat that could walk through walls and into the mind of the man with his finger on the button. Could Soviet telepaths read the minds of American diplomats during arms control treaties, learning our bottom line before we sat down? Could they pull launch codes from the minds of our missile crews? But the most terrifying thought, the one that kept generals awake, could their psychics pinpoint our nuclear submarines? Our entire nuclear defense strategy rested on one idea. Our subs were invincible and undetectable. They were our guaranteed second strike. If the Soviets launched a surprise attack, our subs would survive to unleash a devastating counterattack. But if the Soviets could find them, and tracking them in real time with psychics in a Moscow lab, the balance of world power would be shattered overnight. Our ultimate weapon would be useless. It sounded like science fiction, but to the Defense Intelligence Agency, it was a potential psi gap that could render America's military technology useless. That threat was too great to ignore. The question wasn't whether the Pentagon brass believed in psychic powers. That was irrelevant. The only question that mattered was, the Soviets believed, and what if they were right? America couldn't afford to be left behind. They had to know if this was possible. And if it was, they needed their own psychic army, yesterday. This paranormal arms race was the fire in which Project Stargate was born. The first spark was struck not in a military bunker, but at the Stanford Research Institute, or SRI, in California. In 1972, two physicists interested in the fringes of science, Dr. Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, received a $50,000 CIA grant to investigate anomalous cognition, a dry term for psychic abilities. It was a cautious first step into a strange new world. These were serious scientists with reputations to protect, intrigued by the idea that consciousness was more than a chemical reaction in the brain. What if they wondered if consciousness was a fundamental force, like gravity or electromagnetism? What if it could interact with the world in ways we didn't understand? They recruited gifted individuals who claimed psychic abilities. Most notable was a flamboyant New York artist named Ingo Swann. Swann was a force of nature, brilliant, arrogant, and uninterested in the spooky language of the paranormal. He hated seances and Ouija boards. He wanted a structured, repeatable process. He wanted to turn this unpredictable gift into a reliable operational tool. He came up with a clinical term, remote viewing. The name was a stroke of genius. It stripped away the occult feeling of words like clairvoyance and rebranded the ability as a form of sensory perception, like seeing or hearing, just through an unconventional channel. He developed a strict protocol, a mental martial art. It was designed to allow a viewer to perceive a target anywhere in the world, or even off it using only geographic coordinates. The process was simple in theory. A viewer would sit in a quiet, shielded room. They would be given a paper with a string of numbers, the latitude and longitude of the target. They knew nothing else. Then they would relax, clear their mind, and describe the raw sensory data that drifted into their awareness. Shapes, colors, sounds, smells, and textures. They weren't supposed to guess, just report. I'm sensing something hard and gray, they might say. Something tall. There's a feeling of wind and a sound like flapping. Only later would they assemble these raw pieces into a coherent picture, a flagpole on a windy day. The results were staggering. In one famous test, Swann was given coordinates for Jupiter. This was in 1973, before the Pioneer 10 space probe had reached the planet. It was a test to see if remote viewing was limited by distance. Swann relaxed, focused, and described what he perceived. He described the planet's powerful magnetic field and its swirling, colorful atmosphere. But then he said something that made the scientists raise their eyebrows. He described a ring around Jupiter, similar to Saturn's. At the time, this was unknown to science. No telescope had detected a ring around Jupiter. Months later, Pioneer 10 flew by the planet and sent back the first close-up images. And there it was, a faint, thin, rocky ring encircling Jupiter, exactly as Swann had described. With results like that, the SRI program quickly moved from a curious study to a full-blown intelligence-gathering tool. By 1978, the U.S. Army had seen enough. They took over the program, moved it to a secure facility at Fort Meade, Maryland, and gave it official operational status. The program had graduated from the lab to the Cold War front lines. These weren't civilian artists anymore. They were soldiers and intelligence professionals, America's psychic spies. And into this strange new world walked a man who would change everything.
Well, now, before all the spooky business with the government, I was a police officer, even served as a commissioner back in Burbank, California. Had a knack for it, a sort of intuition, you could say. I could get a hunch about a case, and more often than not, it'd pan out. After I retired, I got involved with some folks at the Stanford Research Institute. They were looking into what they called remote viewing, the ability to see things far away, things you shouldn't be able to see. Turns out I was pretty good at it. I'd close my eyes and I could describe places, even read documents that were miles away, sometimes even across the globe. The CIA got interested, and for a time I was their man on the inside from the outside. They'd give me coordinates and I'd tell them what the other side was up to. It was a wild ride being part of that whole Stargate project. Some folks thought I was a charlatan, others a patriot. I just saw what I saw and told it like it was. It was a strange life, but I'll tell you it was never dull.
Into this world of psychic spies and mental martial arts walked a man who would shatter every expectation. His name was Patrick Price, and he was not your typical psychic. If you met him on the street, you'd think he was an ordinary guy, maybe your neighbor. He was a retired police commissioner from Burbank, California, a tough, practical lawman known for his almost supernatural ability to solve impossible cases. He was grounded, pragmatic, with the no-nonsense attitude from a life spent dealing with the hardest edges of human nature. In the police department, his colleagues didn't talk about psychic abilities, they just called them hunches. But Price's hunches were different. His clearance rate for solving crimes was legendary. Stories circulated like folklore. When a young girl went missing, the search stretched for days, growing desperate. The search teams had combed the area, finding nothing. Price arrived at the command post, closed his eyes for a moment, and drew a rough map on a napkin.
Look here. You'll find her there. She's alive, but she's hurt,
he said, pointing to a specific, overlooked drainage culvert miles away. They found her exactly where he said, with a broken leg. Another time, at a baffling homicide scene with no witnesses or evidence. Price walked into the victim's house, took one slow look, and told his detectives to check the plumbing under the kitchen sink. Tucked inside the U-bend, wrapped in plastic, was the murder weapon. He never explained how he knew. He'd just say,
"It felt like the right place to look."
He was a natural. His innate ability a tool honed not in a seminar, but on his city's gritty streets. When he joined the SRI program, he quickly proved to be a psychic heavyweight, a true prodigy. While other viewers described vague shapes and colors, Price delivered astonishingly precise details. His viewings were so accurate they sent shockwaves through the U.S. intelligence community, causing panic usually reserved for a foreign invasion. He was given a target that was just a set of coordinates. He knew nothing else. As he focused, he began to describe a secret National Security Agency facility in Sugar Grove, West Virginia. But he didn't just describe the buildings, he went inside. With his mind, he walked the halls. He described the office layouts, the color of filing cabinets, and the titles on folders inside. He read the names of specific staff members working there. Let's put ourselves in that room. In California, Pat Price sits calmly, describing what he sees in his mind's eye.
"There's a man named Johnson. He's at his desk. He's looking at a document labeled Project Aquarius."
Across the country, inside that hyper-secure NSA facility, a man named Johnson is, at that moment, looking at that exact file. When the transcript of Price's viewing got back to the NSA, it caused absolute panic. They were so alarmed they launched a full internal investigation, convinced there had to be a mole. It was the only logical explanation. Someone inside must have been feeding information to the SRI team. They put people under surveillance, tapped phones, and searched for a leak for weeks. But they found nothing. There was no mole. The leak was Pat Price's consciousness. He had, with his mind, bypassed billions of dollars of security, fences, guards, electronic sensors, concrete walls, as if it wasn't there. This single event cemented his reputation. Pat Price wasn't just good, he was a phenomenon. He was their star player, their most reliable and powerful asset. Many serious people in the program, the scientists and CIA monitors, were convinced he was the real deal. Then one day in 1973, Price handed his CIA handler, Dr. Hal Puthoff, a transcript. It wasn't from an official session. He had done this one on his own time. Price explained that something had been calling to him, a persistent mental signal he had to explore, like a song stuck in his head. He returned with a report so bizarre, so outside the context of their Cold War intelligence work, it was nearly impossible to process. They were looking for Soviet military secrets, hidden missile silos, and terrorist training camps. And Pat Price had stumbled upon something that seemed to rewrite human history. In the matter-of-fact tone of a police commissioner filing a report, Price claimed to have discovered 4 underground bases operated by a non-human intelligence, and he gave their exact geographic coordinates. First, Mount Hayes, a towering ice-covered peak in the remote Alaskan wilderness. He identified this as a critical hub, a regional headquarters. Second, Mount Puro, on the rugged border of France and Spain in the Pyrenees Mountains. This, he claimed, was the main European outpost. Third, Mount Nyangani, the highest point in Zimbabwe. This was the African node and, according to Price, had a very specific function. And fourth, Mount Seal, deep in the desolate heart of the Australian outback. This wasn't a vague vision of aliens under a mountain. Price provided stunning, specific details. He described the base's functions, from research and surveillance to maintenance and repair. He described the appearance of their occupants, noting they looked surprisingly human, far from the popular image of gray aliens. He claimed they were ancient and had been on Earth for a very long time, viewing humanity with a mixture of scientific curiosity and mild concern, like a biologist observing a bustling ant colony. They weren't hostile, he reported, but they were definitely here. For Hal Puthoff and his CIA monitors, this was a professional nightmare. What were they supposed to do with this? They were tasked with providing actionable intelligence on the Soviets. They couldn't send commandos to a mountain in Alaska based on a psychic report of an alien base. They couldn't walk into the Oval Office and tell the president there were non-human bases on Earth. It was career suicide. The information was too bizarre to investigate officially, but the source, the man who had mentally walked the halls of the NSA, was far too credible to dismiss. They trusted him. They had seen his results time and again. The files on Pat Price's 4 bases became radioactive intelligence, too dangerous to handle. They were locked away in the project's archives, classified at the highest level. It was a secret too dangerous to share and too important to forget. It sat there in a classified file cabinet, a ticking time bomb of information, a profound, terrifying signal waiting in the silence. To grasp the enormity of Pat Price's claim, we must see these 4 mountains not as random points on a map, but as places with unique character and a history of high strangeness. Each one is remote, geologically significant, and shrouded in mystery. When you look at them together, a chillingly intelligent pattern emerges, as if they were chosen for specific reasons. The first of the 4 pillars is the Alaskan Nexus. Mount Hayes has captured the imagination more than any other. It stands in the remote, frozen heart of the state, a 13,000-foot spire of rock and ice. This is not a place for casual hikes. It is a place that can kill you. The landscape is a brutal wilderness of glaciers, jagged peaks, and endless snow-covered valleys. In this world of white and blue, the only sounds are the howling wind and cracking ice. The thin, frigid air feels like breathing knives. Nature itself provides perfect security, a fortress of ice and stone that keeps humans at a distance. Here, in this desolate corner of the world, the first piece of the puzzle lies hidden. This region is the epicenter of the Alaska Triangle, an area stretching from Anchorage to Juneau and up to Barrow. On a map, it is a simple triangle, but on the ground, it is a place of profound mystery. Since the 1970s, over 20,000 people have vanished within its boundaries, a number that dwarfs the more famous Bermuda Triangle. These are official missing persons cases, each a tragedy, each an unanswered question. Experienced hikers walk up a trail and never return. Search parties find abandoned campsites with food still cooking, but no sign of the people. Entire villages have been lost. Officials blame the harsh weather and terrain, but many disappearances happen in perfect conditions without explanation. It's as if the land is hungry and swallows people whole. A Cessna on a routine flight between Fairbanks and Anchorage radios its position in clear weather. The pilot is experienced. 10 minutes later, silence. The plane is gone. The radar is blank. Weeks of searching reveal nothing. No wreckage, no signal, no oil slick on a frozen lake. The plane and its occupants were plucked from our reality. This story repeats year after year. This dread is amplified by what people see in the skies. Local pilots, guides, and indigenous communities tell the same stories. They talk of lights that are not planes or stars. They describe silent, dark, triangular craft hovering over peaks before accelerating to impossible speeds. They speak of energy vortexes where compasses spin and electronics fail. It is a land where the veil between our world and another feels impossibly thin, where the rules of physics seem to break. Into this strangeness, another incredible story emerged. In the early 1990s, a classified geological survey discovered something impossible. A team using advanced ground-penetrating radar to map the deep geology scanned an area between Mount Hayes and Denali. Their screens lit up with an image that should not exist. Deep beneath the rock and ice, their instruments detected a massive, perfectly formed pyramid. This was no natural formation. Its geometry was precise, its angles perfect, its sides impossibly smooth. The artificial structure was significantly larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, a subterranean mountain built with deliberate intelligence. It was made of an unknown material, like polished black stone with properties that defied analysis. The discovery was immediately classified at the highest level, a secret deemed too paradigm-shattering for public knowledge. The pyramid was not dormant. It emitted a powerful energy field, a low-frequency hum that disrupted sensitive electronics and caused disorientation and fear in those who flew over the area. It was ancient, unimaginably old, and utterly inexplicable. A piece of forgotten history, a technology so far beyond our own. In 1973, 2 decades earlier, Retired Police Commissioner Pat Price sat at the Stanford Research Institute. He closed his eyes and projected his consciousness thousands of miles away to the Alaska Range. Given only geographic coordinates, he described a massive, hollowed-out complex deep inside Mount Hayes. He saw it not as a cave, but as a nexus, a hub of operations for non-human beings. He perceived it as one of the most important non-human facilities on the planet, dedicated to studying humanity, our biology, and the ecosystem. Was the base Price saw built to study the ancient pyramid buried nearby? Is the mountain base a modern observation post constructed to monitor or harness the artifact's incredible energy? Or is the pyramid the power source, the central engine for the entire subterranean complex? The base and the pyramid seem to be two parts of the same impossible secret. Price's description went beyond structures. He described the occupants. They were not gray aliens. He saw beings that looked unnervingly human. Their main differences were internal: heart, lungs, blood, and eyes. Outwardly, they could pass unnoticed in any city. They looked like us. Perhaps he suggested they were an older branch of our family tree, a hominid species that evolved in secret, or perhaps they were an alien intelligence that adopted a non-threatening form. More disturbing was their capability. Price claimed these beings could influence human minds. He used a chilling phrase:
Thought transfer for motor control of us.
This was not telepathy, but the ability to directly interface with the human brain and control physical actions, like a puppeteer pulling invisible strings. This suggested an installation with a profoundly unsettling capability, that some human actions might not have been our own. Price also claimed the base was responsible for mysterious malfunctions of American and Soviet spy satellites, painting a picture of an active installation capable of projecting its power into orbit. It acted as a planetary defense grid, monitoring and occasionally neutralizing human technology that ventured too close. Years later, at the military's remote viewing unit at Fort Meade, later known as Project Stargate, a female soldier was given the same coordinates in a blind training exercise. She relaxed her mind and began to describe what she saw. She described a deep, underground facility inside a massive, ice-covered mountain. She described advanced technology and a strange, humming energy source. Then she described the occupants, saying they looked exactly like human beings. It was a direct, independent match. Two minds separated by nearly a decade saw the same impossible thing. This was a corroborated signal, an echo suggesting something real waited in the Alaskan ice. Geologically, Mount Hayes is the perfect hiding place. A dormant volcano, its history of eruptions would have created a network of empty lava tubes and magma chambers deep within. The perfect starting point for a massive underground base, already shielded by miles of rock. The mountain's immense ice cap would make the facility invisible to spy satellites, thermal imaging, or any conventional surveillance. The mountain itself is a natural fortress, designed by nature to keep secrets. It seems something decided to use it for exactly that purpose. From Alaska's frozen peaks, the secret map leads across the globe to the rugged mountains of Europe. The second pillar is Mount Puro, a limestone giant on the border of France and Spain. Its name, meaning pure or singular, fits a place hiding a secret of profound importance. This is a land of sharp peaks, deep valleys, and ancient forests, a place of breathtaking beauty, isolation, and deep history. Pat Price identified this mountain as the European node in the hidden global network, a key hub for operations across Europe and northern Africa. The Pyrenees Range is a natural fortress, for centuries a refuge for groups like the Cathars, who hid sacred texts from the church, and the Basque people who preserved their ancient culture. These mountains have a long history of keeping secrets. They are a land of independent people and ancient legends. A secret non-human base here is supported by the region's long history of anomalous phenomena. The area around Mount Puro is a UFO window, with a high concentration of sightings. For decades, locals and tourists have reported strange things in the sky. Silent glowing lights that move among the peaks, performing maneuvers that defy physics, objects that appear, hover, and vanish in an instant. This is not treated with ridicule, but with cautious curiosity, woven into local folklore alongside ancient legends of spirits. When Pat Price and later military viewers targeted Mount Puro, they perceived something different from the Alaskan base, a structure that was older, deeper, and quieter. While Hayes felt like a bustling scientific center, Puro felt like a communications hub, a great listening post. They described it as a relay station for sending and receiving vast amounts of information, connecting the global network. They perceived shielded entrances high on sheer rock faces and deep, impossibly straight tunnels boring into the roots of the mountain range. A remote viewer at Fort Meade, given the coordinates blind, perceived not buildings but a signal, a pulse, a deep rhythmic hum from a giant machine sleeping underground. He described a sense of information flowing, of data collected from all over Europe and beamed into the mountain's heart. Then he perceived another signal leaving, a focused beam of energy shooting into the sky. He described it as a subspace transmission, a communication that uses no normal radio waves. He was perceiving a key node in a galactic internet, its main server hidden inside an ancient European mountain. Price's original viewing provides a stunning anchor for this strange local activity. It suggests the lights seen by generations of locals are not random visitors, but the daily traffic of vehicles from a hidden base. The mountain isn't just a mountain, it is an airport, a spaceport. The mystery of Mount Puro is that of a place hidden in plain sight, its secrets protected by rugged terrain and the veil of myth. The third pillar is in Africa, at the highest peak in Zimbabwe, Mount Inyangani. This is not just rock and earth, it is a place of spiritual power. For the Shona people, it is holy ground where the living and spirit worlds intersect, a mountain they call embroiled in myth and mysteries of ancient spirits. Local legends are filled with warnings. Do not point at the peak or you will bring bad luck. Do not get lost in its mists or the mountain will swallow you. Never underestimate its power. These are not just stories. The mountain has a dark, documented reputation for making people vanish. The children of a government minister disappeared while hiking. A massive search found nothing. The school teacher vanished. His car and belongings left at the trailhead. The folklore is a constant reminder that Mount Inyangani is a place of dangerous power. The mountain, it is said, takes people. Into this mystical landscape, the Stargate narrative inserts a modern, technological function. The base deep beneath Mount Inyangani serves a specific purpose. It is the network's central workshop, a massive hub for maintenance and repair. It is a vast, subterranean hangar and industrial complex where advanced craft and technology are serviced, repaired, and perhaps constructed. The network's dry dock, where non-human engineers work on the transmedium vehicles seen in our skies and oceans. This claim offers a shocking technological reinterpretation of the local legends. The spirits of the mountain may not be ghostly, but tangible. The mountain's power may not be magical, but technological. Remote viewers, blind to the target, perceive not rock, but smooth, cool metal and the hum of powerful machinery. They described a cavernous space lit by a soft, sourceless light. Strange, sleek craft, some damaged, rested in enormous cradles. Tall, slender beings moved with purpose, using tools of light and sound. They saw the workshop of the gods. In this context, stories of disappearances take on a sinister connotation. Are people getting lost, or are they being taken? Does this advanced intelligence capture humans for study, as a biologist captures a butterfly? The idea is monstrous, but it provides a chillingly logical, inhuman explanation for the mountain's dark reputation. The spirits of Mount Inyangani may not be spirits, but mechanics. The sacred ground may hide a secret not spiritual but interstellar. The fourth pillar, the most strategically significant and unsettling, lies in the desolate heart of the Australian continent. Mount Seal, a peak in the McDonnell Ranges, is in the outback, one of the most remote, empty regions on the planet. The absolute silence makes it the perfect place to hide something. There is simply nobody for thousands of miles to see it. The base beneath Mount Seal serves as a continental command center. It is a staging area housing personnel from the other three bases, the brain of the network's Eastern Hemisphere operations, focused on surveillance and strategic planning. But Mount Seal's true significance is its location. It stands next door to one of the most secret intelligence facilities on Earth, the Joint Defense Facility Pine Gap. Pine Gap is not just a military base, it is a nerve center of modern global surveillance, one of the world's most important spy facilities. Hidden in the desert, enormous white radomes cover powerful antennas. Run by the CIA, NSA, and NRO with Australia, its official purpose is controlling spy satellites and collecting signals intelligence. It is an electronic vacuum cleaner in the sky, scooping up military transmissions, radar signals, and internet data across Asia and the Middle East. It is a vital strategic asset of the Western intelligence community. A primary non-human base next to a primary human intelligence superbase is a shocking correlation that cannot be a coincidence. The odds of two such facilities being placed side by chance are astronomical. It means something. This proximity raises disturbing questions. Did we build Pine Gap there because we knew something was inside Mount Seal? A strategic decision to watch a powerful neighbor we could never publicly acknowledge. Are those giant antennas listening not just to China, but also to the strange energy signals from the mountain next door? The Mount Seal and Pine Gap locations ground the fantastic claims of Pat Price in the reality of geopolitics and intelligence operations, connecting UFOs and psychic phenomena to spies and national security. This claim has been uniquely supported. Dr. Hal Puthoff, co-founder of the SRI remote viewing program that worked with Price, publicly stated on camera,
"One of our remote viewers found a UFO base in Australia."
This was not an anonymous leak, but a confirmation from a founding father of the program who saw the data himself. A UFO base in Australia, exactly where Price said it would be. These 4 locations, the Nexus of Hayes, the Listening Post of Puro, the Workshop of Inyangani, and the Command Center of SEAL, form the global grid Pat Price laid out in 1973. It was a map of a hidden world, so incredible and dangerous it was locked away for nearly a decade. It was a terrifying signal in the silence, a map of a hidden world waiting for an explorer brave enough to follow it and send explorers into the veil. By 1982, the remote viewing program was embedded within the U.S. Army's Intelligence and Security Command. The man in charge of its operations was Frederick Skip Atwater, the operations and training officer for the military's unit at Fort Meade. Atwater was a professional intelligence officer, a practical, grounded, by-the-book man in a very impractical business. He wasn't a true believer or a debunker, he was an investigator. His job was to see if this strange tool could produce verifiable intelligence. When Pat Price's old files on the 4 non-human bases came across his desk, he found himself at a crossroads. The claim was outlandish, a fantasy, but the source, Pat Price, was impeccable. Atwater had studied Price's track record. He knew about the Sugar Grove incident. He knew Price was a legend, the gold standard against which all other viewers were measured. The top people who had worked with Price were convinced of his abilities. Atwater knew that if even a fraction of Price's claim were true, it would be the single most important secret in human history. He couldn't ignore it. But he also couldn't officially task his unit to find alien bases. He could imagine the conversation with his commanding officer.
"Sir, I'd like to dedicate our national security assets to verify a psychic's report about a UFO garage in Zimbabwe."
He'd be laughed out of the Pentagon, probably sent for a psychiatric evaluation, and his career would be over. But he couldn't let it go. The intelligence officer in him, trained to follow a lead no matter how strange, knew a signal this strong from a source this credible had to be investigated. It was his duty. So he took it off the books. He created an unofficial skunkworks project, a mission with no official paper trail. He framed it as a series of difficult challenge targets for his viewers during downtime to keep their skills sharp. It was the perfect cover. No official records would be kept. He gave it a simple designation, Project 8200, marking the near decade since Pat Price's original vision. The methodology had to be absolutely strict. This was Atwater's primary concern. If he was going to do this, he would do it right. He gathered his best viewers, a small elite team. He gave them nothing but the raw geographic coordinates for each of the 4 mountains, one at a time, over weeks. Just a string of numbers on a blank sheet of paper. No maps, no photographs, no hints. They weren't told they were looking for UFO bases. They weren't even told the coordinates pointed to a mountain. Most importantly, they were never told they were trying to confirm Pat Price's old classified data. They were operating completely blind. This double-blind protocol was crucial. It was designed to prevent any possibility of suggestion or bias. If their independent viewings produced descriptions that matched Price's original report, the results would be statistically explosive. It wouldn't be proof, but it would be powerful evidence they were all perceiving a real, objective signal. And that's exactly what happened. As the session transcripts piled up on his desk, Atwater read them, his professional skepticism slowly giving way to profound awe and unease. One after another, the military viewers, working alone and blind to the target, described what Pat Price had seen almost 10 years earlier. Their reports were a chorus of echoes, a stunning, independent corroboration. They consistently perceived massive, hollowed-out artificial structures deep inside the mountains. They used words like cavernous, vast, and geometrically precise. These weren't natural caves, they were engineered spaces. They all described incredibly advanced technology, facilities humming with strange energies. A recurring theme was their struggle to find words for what they were perceiving. They were trained to describe Soviet tanks, not technology that seemed to defy physics. One viewer, describing a power source, might say,
"It radiates cold instead of heat. I don't know what it is. We don't have a word for this."
This inability to easily describe what they saw was, for Atwater, a powerful sign of authenticity. They weren't making things up. They were genuinely struggling to report a perception outside their experience. Most chillingly, they reported the presence of non-human entities. Like Price, they often described them as tall and humanoid, but distinctly not human. They also reported a strange, unsettling sense of being detected, of their own probing consciousness being noticed by the base occupants. It was as if their psychic glance had tripped a mental security alarm. They would sometimes receive powerful mental impressions, a strong sense of being told to, "Go away. You are not supposed to be here." At Mount Hayes, the viewers perceived a massive underground complex for weather and geological study, a direct echo of Price's vision. At Mount Puro, they sensed a key communication node in a larger network, again matching earlier data. For Mount Inyangani, they reported an industrial environment, a workshop for maintenance and repair, with large openings for craft. And at Mount Seal, the feeling was of a central command center, its purpose somehow tied to the nearby Pine Gap facility. The collective weight of these independent sessions, all pointing to the same fantastic conclusions, transformed Pat Price's isolated claim into a corroborated body of data. This wasn't one man's strange vision anymore. It was a repeated, verifiable perception, documented under controlled conditions by the U.S. military's own operatives. For Skip Atwater, the professional intelligence officer, it was a moment of terrifying validation. The signal was real. The implications were staggering, and he was the man who had found it. We must now turn back to the man who started it all, whose extraordinary gift opened this door to an impossible reality. The man who may have paid the ultimate price for what he could see. Pat Price's life of unbelievable perception ended abruptly and mysteriously in July 1975. He died in a Las Vegas hotel room at 56. The official story was a neat, simple heart attack, a quiet end to a remarkable life. But when you look deeper, the official story unravels, revealing a pattern riddled with inconsistencies and actions that defy standard procedure, especially for a man connected to sensitive national security operations. Suspicion that his death was not natural is reinforced by a convergence of procedural anomalies and credible testimony from those who ran the psychic spying program. The first and most significant red flag is the complete absence of an autopsy and the suspiciously fast cremation of his body. Dr. Kit Green, a CIA analyst and forensic specialist who was the agency's scientific monitor for the SRI program, expressed profound shock and suspicion when he arrived in Las Vegas to investigate. He learned no autopsy had been performed on a man who was a critical asset in a top-secret intelligence program. Why? The reason given was highly irregular. According to the hospital, an unidentified, well-dressed man, not a family member, arrived shortly after Price's death. He carried what he claimed was Price's medical history and calmly convinced the staff that Price had a known, pre-existing heart condition. This single act waived the need for a post-mortem examination, preventing any scientific search for toxins or other signs of foul play. It was a masterful move that cut off the most important avenue of investigation. Compounding this was the equally suspicious speed with which Price's body was cremated, destroying all evidence forever. Russell Targ, the SRI program co-founder, later stated that Price's wife was notified of her husband's death after his ashes had been interred in an unmarked grave. No autopsy. Rapid cremation, delayed notification. This is a textbook example of a forensic cleanup. The second unsettling anomaly is Price's own premonition. A man who perceived hidden truths reportedly foresaw his own end. Colleagues at SRI recounted that Price was filled with palpable anxiety before his final trip to Las Vegas. He expressed a firm belief to his friends that his life was in danger. This wasn't a vague fear, it was a specific premonition that he was being targeted. This feeling was so strong, it led him to take a practical step. He purchased a $1 million term life insurance policy for his wife just before he left. This proactive measure, taken by a man whose paranormal perception was a verified intelligence asset, strongly suggests Price had seen a credible and imminent threat. Third, the institutional aftermath points to a larger pattern of wanting to shut things down. Price's death in mid-1975 happened at the exact time the CIA suddenly pulled all funding from the SRI program. Price was their star performer. His uncanny abilities were the primary justification for the program's existence. With Price gone, one of the most compelling arguments for the program's continuation was silenced forever. These anomalous circumstances have given rise to three primary theories, each identifying a powerful organization with a clear motive for wanting Pat Price dead. The first, and perhaps most uncomfortable, implicates the CIA itself. Price's proven ability to psychically access the nation's most sensitive secrets made him an incalculable security risk. If he could read NSA files from across the country, what prevented him from reading the CIA's own files, or the president's? He was a psychic loose cannon, a security nightmare they couldn't control. Furthermore, around that time, in 1975, congressional hearings known as the Church Committee were revealing the CIA had developed exotic, untraceable assassination tools. Chief among them was the infamous heart attack gun, a weapon firing a tiny frozen dart of potent shellfish toxin. The dart would penetrate the skin, melt instantly, and deliver a poison that would induce fatal heart attack, leaving only a tiny red dot, a detail easily missed without the autopsy that was never performed. The second theory involves the Church of Scientology. It was known that Price was a high-ranking member. This created serious concerns within the intelligence community that he might be leaking classified information to Scientology's own intelligence wing. This would have provided a powerful motive for his elimination, either by the CIA to neutralize a catastrophic security breach, or perhaps by elements within Scientology itself to silence him. But the third, and what many researchers consider the most probable theory, points to the Soviet KGB. The 1970s marked the peak of the psychic arms race. Pat Price was America's superweapon. His celebrated remote viewing of a secret Soviet weapons facility was a direct, devastating hit against the Soviet war machine. In that session, he described a massive 60-foot-tall gantry crane being used to assemble large metallic spheres. This intelligence was so precise it was initially dismissed, until a satellite was tasked to fly over the coordinates. The resulting photograph stunned everyone. There it was, a giant gantry crane, assembling large spheres exactly as he had described. By penetrating their deepest secrets, Pat Price had made himself a high-priority KGB target. Declassified DIA reports from that era confirm U.S. intelligence believed the KGB was actively researching psychic assassination, specifically the ability to stop a human heart from a distance. The KGB had the motive to eliminate a powerful American psychic spy. They had the alleged means, a way to induce a heart attack remotely or through an untraceable poison. And they had the opportunity in Las Vegas. A persistent rumor has circulated for years of a former KGB agent who later confessed to have taken care of a psychic in Las Vegas around that exact time. Pat Price was a man who could see things no one else could, making him both an incredible asset and an existential threat. His story is a cautionary tale of the high stakes involved when the veil of secrecy is pierced. His end remains irrevocably shrouded in mystery, a testament to the price one might pay for seeing the truth.
Though death smiles at us all, to smile back is to choose a life whose actions echo in eternity.
We stand at a crossroads of belief, and before us lay four paths forward. The evidence from Project 8200 is too consistent for random noise, yet the story it tells is too fantastic to accept easily. The signal is there, but what does it mean? Understanding it requires exploring the different paths of explanation. There are four competing ideas. 4 possible realities that could explain this profound mystery. Path 1. This path takes the data at face value. Pat Price and the military viewers were perceiving real physical bases, built and operated by intelligent beings from another world. In this reality, they came to Earth long ago, established covert bases in remote locations, and have been observing us since, like scientists observing a species in a nature preserve. The consistency in the report stems from them all observing the same real thing. This is the simplest explanation, but it requires the monumental leap of accepting a secret alien presence on our planet as fact. Path 2. This path suggests the bases and their occupants are not from another planet, but from another reality coexisting with ours, a parallel dimension. Modern physics, particularly string theory, speculates about multiple unseen extra dimensions. What if these beings are not space travelers, but dimension hoppers? This would explain the high strangeness, the physics-defying technology, their appearances and disappearances, and the lack of physical evidence. They can interact with our reality, perhaps where the veil between dimensions is thin, but they do not fully exist within it. The viewers were not looking at a place across the ocean, but a place across a dimensional membrane. Path 3. This path keeps its feet on the ground. The bases are real. The technology is real, but it is all human. This is the breakaway civilization theory. It suggests a secret faction of humanity, perhaps a multinational military-industrial group, achieved a massive technological breakthrough decades ago, possibly from reverse engineering a recovered non-human craft. This group would have harnessed technologies like free energy and anti-gravity, and then went dark, operating in total secrecy from bases deep underground and in space. They have built a separate parallel human civilization centuries ahead of us. The viewers were seeing the secret infrastructure of this hidden human group. The alien beings they saw could be a misinterpretation, or even a deliberate psychic screen, a mental camouflage to hide the human truth. The chilling proximity of Mount Seal to Pine Gap is the strongest evidence for this path. Path 4. This is the darkest, most cynical path. It suggests the entire story is a lie, a masterful, complex psychological operation, a psyop. Pat Price's original report was not a genuine psychic perception, but a deliberate injection of a story into the U.S. intelligence system. This could have been done by a foreign power like the KGB to confuse and misdirect us. Or, more disturbingly, it could have been created by our own agencies to spread a specific narrative. Project 8200 could have been a carefully managed exercise designed to create corroborated data to support this narrative. The goal, perhaps to create a belief in a common external threat to unify humanity, or to hide extremely advanced human technology by creating a cover story that blames it on aliens. It is a hall of mirrors, where remote viewing is not what's being studied, but is the tool used for manipulation, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, advanced human, or deliberate deception. The true nature of the signal from Project 8200 likely lies somewhere along these paths, or in some unknown space between them. But one thing is certain: something was being perceived. The signal, whatever its source, was real. The story that began inside Four Mountains does not end there. The implications of Project 8200 were already staggering, but the data, combined with vast ufological lore and other anomalous reports, suggests this terrestrial grid is just one piece of a larger multi-domain infrastructure. The four mountain bases were not isolated outposts. They were anchor points, beachheads in a much larger strategic theater of operations. The network extends from the dark, crushing pressures of the deepest oceans to the cold, silent vacuum of deep space. It paints a picture of a non-human intelligence that has achieved true strategic depth, occupying the most inaccessible frontiers of our world, places where humanity can barely venture, let alone control, into the great abyssal frontier of the oceans. The oceans cover over 70% of our planet, yet they remain its most unexplored part. We know more about the craters on the far side of the moon than about the floors of our own deepest seas. The sheer volume of this space is almost impossible to comprehend. It is a world of crushing pressure, absolute darkness, and freezing temperatures. It is an environment more hostile and alien to us than the surface of Mars, the perfect place to hide. The military has known this for decades. Someone or something else has known it for much longer. For as long as people have seen strange things in the sky, unidentified aerial phenomena, sailors, fishermen, and naval officers have seen equally strange things in the water. These are called unidentified submerged objects, or USOs. Many UAP sightings throughout history involve objects flying into or out of the water, or maneuvering beneath the waves at impossible speeds. Naval vessels have tracked these objects on their most advanced sonar systems. They record objects moving at hundreds, sometimes thousands of knots underwater. To put that in perspective, our most advanced nuclear submarines can barely reach 40 knots. Any human-built vessel moving at several hundred knots underwater would be torn apart by the immense forces of friction and pressure. These USOs also perform maneuvers that defy our understanding of hydrodynamics. They make instant right-angle turns. They stop on a dime. They ascend or descend thousands of feet in seconds. They behave as if the water is not there. The most famous modern example is the 2004 USS Nimitz Tic Tac incident, now officially confirmed and released by the Pentagon. The incident began with the advanced radar of the USS Princeton tracking strange objects for days. These objects appeared out of nowhere at 80,000 feet, far above normal air traffic, and then plummeted to just above the ocean surface in less than 2 seconds, a speed that would destroy any known aircraft. Sent to investigate, F-18 fighter pilot Commander David Fravor and his wingmen saw a large area of the ocean surface being churned up, as if a giant object was boiling the water from just beneath the surface. Hovering just above this disturbance was the Tic Tac, a 40-foot-long, white-smooth, oblong object with no wings, no rotors, and no visible means of propulsion. The object then ascended, mirrored the movements of Fravor's fighter jet, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. This event is a prime example of the phenomenon. It is not just aerial, it is naval. The disturbance in the water was the key. It suggested the object had either just emerged from the ocean or was about to enter it. This ability to operate seamlessly in both air and water is called transmedium capability, a hallmark of the phenomenon. It strongly implies that the operators of these craft have an underwater infrastructure. Operating so effectively in the ocean logically implies bases there, places to rest, repair vehicles, and resupply, hidden from human eyes. Ufological lore is filled with stories and alleged locations for these secret seabed bases. The same declassified government documents that name Mount Hayes as a land base are also said to mention deep underwater sites off the coast of Puerto Rico. In the immense Puerto Rico Trench, one of the deepest points in the Atlantic Ocean. Other locations mentioned are near the Bahamas and in the deep canyons of the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. A UFO research group in Mexico has long claimed that an active underwater base named Amupac, located off the country's coastline, actively protects the region from hurricanes. A bizarre but persistent local legend. Caution is required, as the waters are deliberately muddied. The brilliant researcher Dr. Richard Sauter, who spent years digging through official government archives, uncovered a long and detailed paper trail of official U.S. Navy patents, engineering blueprints, and plans for building large manned bases on the sea floor. These are not conspiracy theories, these are documented facts. The U.S. military has been actively planning to build secret underwater installations since at least the 1960s, bases capable of secretly docking their own nuclear submarines. The Navy already operates a massive underwater testing facility in a deep Idaho lake, where they test miniature submarine models away from the prying eyes of Russian and Chinese spy satellites. They have been actively pursuing the goal of dominating the undersea environment for over half a century. This documented reality of secret human underwater projects creates a critical ambiguity, a fog of uncertainty over what is really happening in the deep. Are the Navy's reported USO sightings glimpses of a non-human alien presence? Or are they secret tests of our own black-budget undersea fleet? A fleet so advanced that even our own regular naval pilots do not know it exists. Is the alien story a brilliant cover to hide our own next-generation technology? Or is our own advanced technology desperately trying to catch up with and defend against an ancient non-human presence that has owned the oceans for thousands of years? The answer is likely complex and may involve a little of both, but it proves one certainty. The idea of secret underwater bases is not science fiction, it is a strategic reality. Someone is operating in the deep, silent, dark world beneath the waves. The only question is, Who? The final and most mind-bending frontier of this expanded secret network is space itself. The emerging narrative suggests the base is hidden deep inside our mountains, and at the bottom of our oceans are merely ground stations. They are ports of call, local offices for a much larger operation, not based on Earth. They are the connection points between our planet and a vast infrastructure extending throughout our solar system, and perhaps beyond. This is the realm of secret space programs and the speculative yet persistent theory of a breakaway civilization. The most famous codename ever attached to this incredible idea is Solar Warden. The theory of Solar Warden posits that sometime after World War II, likely after the recovery of crashed non-human technology like the saucer at Roswell, New Mexico, a secret multinational group involving elements of the U.S. military, intelligence agencies, and powerful corporations reverse engineered this alien technology. They built their own fleet of advanced interstellar spacecraft. This program, operating under a budget so black it is completely invisible to any official government oversight, would represent the single greatest secret in human history. This secret fleet, the theory goes, operates silently in the space around our planet and throughout the solar system. Its mission is to defend the Earth from potential threats, manage complex interplanetary politics with other non-human species, and most importantly, keep the truth of its own existence from the general public on Earth. It sounds like pure fantasy, the plot of a blockbuster movie, but the theory is supported by numerous whistleblowers, many with credible military and intelligence backgrounds, and a trail of tantalizing circumstantial evidence. The most famous piece of evidence is a testimonial from an unlikely source, a Scottish computer hacker named Gary McKinnon. In 2002, McKinnon, a UFO enthusiast, broke into highly sensitive and secured NASA and Pentagon computer systems. For over a year, he had nearly unrestricted access, poking around in digital file cabinets never meant for public eyes. He claimed to find exactly what he was looking for. He said he found documents listing ship-to-ship cargo transfer logs for vessels not part of the official U.S. Navy. More shockingly, he claimed to find an Excel spreadsheet containing a list of non-terrestrial officers. Think about that phrase, non-terrestrial officers. He claimed he saw a list of names, ranks, and serial numbers for military personnel not stationed anywhere on Earth. He also claimed that just before his connection was cut and he was caught, he was viewing a NASA computer image of a huge silver cigar-shaped spacecraft in orbit around the Earth, an image clearly taken by a satellite but scrubbed from all public archives. McKinnon's claims, while impossible to verify, electrified the UFO research community. He was arrested in the UK, and the US government began a fierce 10-year legal battle to have him extradited. They wanted to bring him to the United States, where he faced the possibility of spending the rest of his life in a maximum security prison. The sheer ferocity of the US government's effort seemed disproportionate for what they publicly called a mischievous hacker who caused minimal damage. Many believe they fought so hard to silence him because he had actually seen something real. He had stumbled across the paper trail of the breakaway civilization, a secret segment of humanity technologically and culturally centuries ahead of the rest of us, operating secretly among the stars. Here, the entire incredible story comes full circle, tying all the different domains, land, sea, and space, together into one coherent picture. According to the summary of the unofficial Project 8200 launched by Skip Atwater to verify Pat Price's claims, his military remote viewers consistently perceived that the 4 mountain bases were working together to communicate with space-based platforms associated with UAP. This is the final crucial link in the chain. The psychic spies at Fort Meade, operating completely blind and unaware of their target, kept reporting a sense of upward-looking communication. They described feeling a powerful data stream, a signal transmitted from deep within the mountains, shooting straight up into the blackness of space, connecting to objects in orbit and beyond. This single corroborated perception frames the entire phenomenon as a single integrated system. The bases hidden deep inside the Earth are connected to platforms waiting in deep space. The USOs patrolling our oceans are the same transmedium craft as the UAPs maneuvering in our atmosphere. It provides a chillingly coherent strategic logic to Pat Price's original unbelievable vision. While the existence of Solar Warden remains a theory, the undeniable reality of official public military space programs from advanced spy satellites to space-based laser weapons, proves our governments have the intent and capability to operate secretly beyond the atmosphere. The U.S. Air Force's robotic space plane, the X-37B, can stay in orbit for years at a time, its mission and payload a complete secret. We are already operating in secret in space. The only question is, how far have we really gone? And are we truly alone out there? The unresolved signal from Project 8200 suggests the answer to both questions would change our world forever. So where does our journey leave us? We've traveled from the paranoia of the Cold War to the desolate peaks of 4 continents. We've delved into the strange science of remote viewing and listened to the echoes brought back from the minds of America's psychic spies. We are left not with a simple answer, but with a profound, persistent, and deeply unsettling anomaly. The official story is that Project Stargate was terminated in 1995. Rumors persist that they only renamed the program and moved it further into the shadows. But that is another story. Officially, a review concluded the program had failed to produce any reliable, actionable intelligence. In a single stroke, 20 years of secret research were relegated to the dustbin of history, dismissed as a bizarre but failed experiment, a quirky footnote in the Cold War. But that conclusion feels too neat. It ignores the signal. The signal began with Pat Price, a man whose psychic abilities were so potent they sent shockwaves through the highest levels of the intelligence community. A man verified time and again as being uncannily accurate. That signal, his report on the 4 bases, was then amplified and corroborated by Project 8200, where a team of America's own trained military viewers, under the strictest scientific protocols, all saw the same impossible things in the same impossible places. Statistically, the odds of multiple independent viewers hallucinating the same complex details about 4 separate locations are infinitesimal. It's like asking 4 strangers to independently write a 500-page novel, only to find they all wrote the exact same book, word for word. It defies coincidence. The fact that a seasoned, no-nonsense intelligence officer like Skip Atwater felt compelled to launch this investigation in secret, risking his career, tells us everything. He didn't do it because he was a believer in the paranormal. He did it because Pat Price's data was too important to ignore. This wasn't a game, it was a serious, clandestine attempt to verify a potentially world-altering secret. We see in this story a pattern that repeats when the system is confronted with the truly unknown. An extraordinary event occurs. Credible high-level witnesses provide testimony, data is collected, but the official system, faced with a reality that threatens its foundations, recoils. The data doesn't fit into any existing box, and so the system chooses not to solve the mystery, but to manage it. Information is classified. Witnesses are told to remain silent, projects are terminated, often not because they fail, but because the implications of their success are too paradigm-shattering to contemplate. It is safer to call it a failure and lock the files away than to admit the world is not what we think it is. This is the enduring legacy of Project 8200. It is an unresolved signal, still echoing from declassified files and the memoirs of the men who were there. It is a testament to the courage of those willing to look into the darkness, and a frustrating reminder of the official systems designed to look away. It points toward a deep mystery at the intersection of consciousness, technology, and national security. A mystery that may hold the key to understanding our true place in the cosmos. The cartography of consciousness remains an unfinished map, and the strange hidden territories perceived by the spies of Stargate are still waiting, in the silence, to be explored. Perhaps they are still there, deep beneath the crushing ice of Alaska, inside the ancient limestone heart of the Pyrenees, under the sacred soil of Zimbabwe, and right next to the giant listening dishes in the Australian desert, a silent, waiting intelligence. The question is no longer whether the signal is real, but whether we today have the courage to finally follow it to its source. As we step back from the crossroads, remember, the story doesn't end here, because this is just the beginning. Searching for the knowledge and wisdom to unravel the mysteries of our universe. Unexplained sightings, spirits, and science. They are all connected in the grand tapestry of life. So remember, keep pulling at the threads, because this has been Crossroads of the Veil.